it's your boy Agent Albatross here again with the Cypher Unlimited crew. So we got Spigs or Anthony, and we got Dean or Alpha Dean here, and yeah, we're here to have another little talk. So Dean, who we having a little talk with today?
We are talking to the illustrious Dr. Scott Robinson, excuse me, a friend of ours that we are just getting to know, and we just want to. Let Scott, tell us a little bit about himself. But before we get started with that, I'm going to at least tell you that, he's known on CypherCaster magazine, and he does Invisible Sun podcast called Incantations with Dave Hanlon. But, and he has a pretty extensive background in gaming, kind of like as many years as I have almost, it looks like. So, talk to me, Scott. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, in gaming, I've been, let's see, most of my early gaming, it could, wouldn't be recognizable as any particular game because it was in elementary school and we could barely read the books to the extent we could even read the books, but we had fun anyway. And so I've been gaming since 1980. And have played a wide variety of systems that are, the early years, of course, were mostly Dungeons and Dragons. In high school, had a kind of a more regular group, played a lot of the Marvel superheroes game, the Face Rip system, some Palladium games, and a little D&D mixed in. This was in the heat of the satanic panic in the South. So part of the problem was, and I can literally tell you about times when we would, like, some of our books got burned. They were seized. They were, people were told they were not allowed to talk to other of us in our group because, we were going to lead them astray. And I lived through all of that.
That's crazy.
So sometimes we'd play instead of Dungeons and Dragons, we'd play Marvel superheroes or something like that. Even then, just the very notion of role playing was considered problematic to a lot of the local churches. So it was still a struggle. In college, kept playing a little bit. Started playing more White Wolf games, a lot of Vampire. Didn't play a lot of Wraith, but it was one of my favorites. And I'm happy I just got the 20th anniversary special edition this week. I'm looking forward to reading that. And then kind of played only lightly through kind of graduate school and early career stuff. And played off and on, but became much more active in gaming again about 10, 15 years ago or so. And really became more involved in the broader community as the Cypher system community came together. The Monte Cook Games community kind of came together. I was actually not a Kickstarter backer for Numenera. When I first heard about this, I was like, what is this Kickstarter thing? And that sounds pretty sketchy to me. At this point, I'm now a super backer and have hundreds of things that I've backed. But back then, I was like, this sounds pretty weird. I don't get it. So I pre-ordered Numenera, but I didn't kickstart it. But after that pre-order, I have really been kind of active in the Monte Cook Games community. I did some blogging for the initial CypherCaster, I'm trying to think if it was the CypherCast Network's blog. There was a couple of blogs and community sites that started way back when there was only Numenera. When they announced The Strange, that really caught my attention. I was on a podcast that doesn't cover Monte Cook Games anymore. In fact, actually, the podcast itself doesn't exist anymore, though the host just does other things now, called the Obsidian Monolith. And
I remember them.
Yep. After appearing on that and talking about my excitement for The Strange in particular and some of the stuff I'd done with Numenera, then that kind of made connections to various people in the Monte Cook Games community. And about the same time, I started regularly attending Gen Con. So now it's kind of like my family away from my family. As every year I get to go back to Indianapolis and see, Darcy and Mark Plord and David Wilson Brown and some of these people that I've been talking to now for years and years and involved in the Monte Cook Games community. And I get to see them. And last year I got to meet you guys at the MCG gathering. Yes. And it's just, that's a place I get to go to see and meet those people in person and feel part of this growing and positive community.
It was definitely
That's great.
Everybody.
Yeah, we really do appreciate, all of the Cypher community out there. And yes, God, I knew you said, so 1980. I got you by 3 years as far as gaming.
Okay.
And
I don't like that. I know you're not doing. I was like, I don't really do the gatekeeping thing, but still, I'll concede. You win.
Yeah, we are just saying. Whenever somebody talks about the satanic panic, it just takes me back. I don't know if I ever told Anthony that, but we had a principal, an assistant principal at the school that literally called our parents and told our parents that when we played D&D after school, we were stalking the teachers in the hallways as if they were monsters. And yes,
sounds about right.
Oh yeah, oh my God, she was a big purveyor of Pat Robinson in the 700 Club. It was great.
Yeah, and of course I was in first grade, and my first role playing experience, to the extent my memory holds up at all, was running and seeing a group of kids playing what now I know is D&D in the playground, like with books and papers and things. And I was just this first grader, like, what is this? What are you guys doing? And I only later realized they were hazing me. They wouldn't even know that word, but they let me play with them. But all I remember was I played with them for a few minutes. Then my character got killed. Oh. Then I got reincarnated as a unicorn. And then when I tried to ram into something to fight the next monster, my horn broke off. And they were obviously just trying to make me go away. But my reaction was, this is the most amazing thing I've ever done in my life.
Exactly.
And it started a whole lifetime of interest in RPGs. And for years, I could only half understand the book. I mean, of course, this is the Gygax AD&D stuff. So other than Gygax, everyone only half understood the books anyway. So we would just ignore things. We didn't understand the difference between character level and spell level. So any character of 4th level would cast 4th level spells. That just made sense to our 3rd grade minds. And it didn't matter. We just had fun.
Absolutely.
And that has cast a shadow over the rest of my life. One of the things that brought me back into this community was the sense that, it's not about trying to demonstrate, knowledge and trying to impress people, or it's about having fun.
Right.
That's one of the distinguishing characteristics of these games is it's not, you're not trying to beat other people. You're trying instead to just have fun with each other.
Let's tell a great story. That's my motto.
Exactly.
So,
Scott.
I'm sorry. I was basically saying I'm not going to keep, because we could keep rambling. But we do have some questions for the world out there.
I'm here to rein in this.
Yeah, I saw the rain starting. I saw it.
So we got some questions for you, and we're going to have Anthony start this thing off.
Scott pretty much answered our first question, so I'll switch it up a little bit. But that's great, Scott. That's what we want. We want the dialogue here. So, but
I'm a college professor. I'm used to talking in 3-hour increments.
So the first thing I'm gonna say is welcome and thank you for coming. We really appreciate it. And
thank you for having me.
You gave us a quick history on your gaming history and how you got into gaming. But why Cypher System? Why Monty Cook Games? What's special about that company that made you want to be such a champion for them?
Well, I had been picking up. I'd followed Monty Cook's products back when he was working with on D&D products. He wrote one of my closest friends' favorite modules, I think the Labyrinth of Madness. And so I'd followed some of that for a while. He and Bruce Cordell, actually. Bruce was one of my favorite writers at that time for RPG stuff. And so I had actually followed Monty Cook over to his 3rd edition third-party publisher, Malhavoc Press. And I had the full set of the Malhavoc Press books, and I really liked those a lot. So when he announced he was creating this new game, even though I was a little, unsure about what Kickstarter was, I was sure that I was interested in what Monty Cook was working on. So I followed that, followed the updates, even to the extent a non-backer could. And when the pre-order material became available, I definitely have to get this and check it out. What hooked me there's kind of the system parts of the game, and then there's the community. And I really had never experienced the latter, but the easy parts of the forms, I liked the system. I thought it played smoothly. I liked some of what it was doing, that it was simpler than the directions that a lot of D&D, and at that point, I guess it was right around Pathfinder time. The direction they were going was not the direction I really wanted to go in terms of just what the play experience was like. But the differences aren't that great. I could still have a lot of fun. with either any of those systems. But what I found was different was when I started interacting with people in the Monty Cook Games community, is I just felt part of the community. And I like the efforts that both the Monty Cook Games company personnel and the unaffiliated people in the community, people like us, were doing to try and build an inclusive and a welcoming space for people that wasn't sort of trying to compare each other's experiences and saying, I know this game better than you know this game, or my character is better than your character, or I can optimize better than you can optimize. But instead was like, how can we tell great stories together? How can I help you tell better stories? What can I learn from you about telling better stories? And that sharing and inclusive nature influenced me in ways I would not have anticipated, because I had never been part of a group like that for an RPG. And so that really hooked me. And those two things have kind of kept me around. And even though Numenera, I think it interested me as a beautiful game. I love the landscapes, I love the art, but it intimidated me. I was like, I'm not sure I could even run this game. It's really interesting, but it's just not a type of fiction with which I'm particularly familiar. So I was a little intimidated by it, but the strange hooked me immediately. And then, it's followed from there. Cypher system and all of the opportunities available there. Now I'm, after all, at this point, I'm fine running Numenera.
You want to know what's funny when you talk about Numenera? You know what hooked me? Why Numenera hooked me? Because I really figured I could finally run a Thundar game with no problem.
Absolutely.
Thundar the Barbarian. It was like, ooh.
I personally love the setting, but it was the rule set that hooked me.
Same.
Oh yeah, this rule set is beautiful.
I've played over 100 different games, but it's so easy to GM. I mean, you literally could do 10 minutes of prep and have a full 4-hour session.
Yes.
That rule set.
We've done it. I mean, you know what I say? You know what I say about the rule set? And my favorite is that it's elegant simplicity. Mm-hmm. Is what it is. It's so elegant. I mean, when you really think about how we can craft a game and how the mechanics kind of lend itself to the narrative. Not even lend it supports the narrative. That's what I really dig. It's so cool that we can, the aspects of the game push the story forward.
Yeah, I like to tell my friends that I'm trying to recruit to play in the system when I'm running games I've taught this for years now at Gen Con, and we can get here at whatever time. So let's say 8 o'clock for our game, and 15 minutes later we can be playing. And you can there's a couple things here and there that we'll have to clarify later, but by and large, you've got most of the system and you know how it runs in 15 minutes, and you're playing.
Yep.
Right.
I just want, before we hit our next question, I just want to touch on one thing you said, Scott, about the community. Me and Al in particular, we wasn't part of this community about 2 years ago. We literally just jumped on the scene, and you are absolutely right. Everybody's so welcoming, and it's not necessarily the case with other gaming systems. It's not about what you know or how much better you are at role playing or improv. It's about how we could help each other tell a better story. You are 100% right on that. I mean, I don't think I've met a person that hasn't been supportive, and it's just an awesome experience.
Well, and we can joke about like how far back our histories go with gaming. Yeah. And in some places, that's kind of a big deal. People like really use that to establish hierarchies and say this person's more important or more valid, or their opinions are more valid. I don't get like here, hey, someone who's never played before, you want to play at one of our tables at Gen Con, come on in. We are happy to play with you. And at Gen Con, like I've been running games there for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years now. For MCG, and it's a mixture usually of people, some who have only had other RPG experiences, some have had no other RPG experience, and everyone gets going quickly. And within an hour, you can't really tell who had been playing RPGs for 20 years, who had been playing only one other game for 4 years, and now they're playing this, or someone who just wandered in and thought they're interested in what this tabletop stuff is because they're playing a board game or something. Exactly. And everybody's in it. And I really like how the system is accessible in that way. And that the community is open to that, encouraging of that. Because when someone new comes to the table, that's one more person in not just the Discord channel. That's just one more person in our community that makes our community more diverse, brings new experiences, and it enriches everyone who's in that community when we add even one more voice.
Absolutely.
Well said.
And it's always refreshing to see those new players come in and pick it up so quickly, which is the important part. But not I mean not that's not the important. The important part is they enjoy it. Not only do they pick it up quickly. I've always everyone who like gets their feet wet with the Cypher system or Numenera or whatever have you, I always see them enjoying it thoroughly once they get the ball rolling after those 15 minutes of learning. And 15 minutes of learning is like nothing compared to some other systems.
Absolutely.
But yeah, we'll keep the ball rolling, and let's move on to our next question here. So, can you explain to our listeners who may not know what the CypherCaster magazine is, or the CypherCast network, and what is your involvement with them?
I'll start with CypherCast Network because it was sort of it existed first and is it's an umbrella for a variety of projects that started relatively early on in the MCG community. There's a podcast, CypherCast podcast, that is I think it's monthly right now. Our Incantations podcast is also under that umbrella. And one of the other projects under this umbrella is CypherCaster magazine. This has been the official magazine for content for MCG games. So it's kind of an odd place in the community in that it existed before there was a creator system. There was previously the only way to publish material for Numenera or The Strange was to get a license. And alongside the licensing system, they agreed with one of their member of their editorial board to create this magazine, which would be a place where people could write articles about Numenera or The Strange, and now it's broader than that, of course, but at the time that's what was available, and use MCG art assets. And that magazine has a license to use that material that you couldn't use without your own license, and you still can't use in the creator system. So it was a place for us to have new Numenera content that wasn't by MCG staff. It's not an MCG product, but it was a way for them to sort of open it up, create an outlet for the community to create this content and share it. Right now, it's slowed down a lot, in part because the Cypher creator system, is it the Cypher creator system?
Yes,
Let's call it the creator system. Takes some of that burden off. So the CypherCaster was the way that you could publish this in between having your own license or working at MCG. With the Cypher creator system, there's more opportunities now. People can directly publish material that uses Cypher system information, but you can't use Numenera intellectual property. You can't use The Strange intellectual property. You have to use your own art, except for the packets that they provide, things like that. We still have our original license and the support of MCG. This is not a secret. They're fully aware. That we can try to that we can recruit people or accept proposals for articles, for adventures, for advice columns that are specific to Numenera or The Strange or the other Cypher system games. The authors are allowed to say, I really like to use this art from page 107 of this book. We can use the art from their books in the magazine. So authors don't have to worry about commissioning art or things like that. And as a foundational principle of the magazine, everyone who publishes based on page count and your proportion of the page count, you get a share back of the revenue. So you get actually I don't remember the exact numbers right now, but it's something basically half the revenue goes towards supporting the magazine itself, because sometimes we'll buy covers and none of it goes into the pocket. Like the editorial staff doesn't make money from this for their editorial work, but the other half is more or less, I think it's like 1% per page just goes to an account for you at DriveThruRPG. That's how I built up money on DriveThruRPG. Is I wrote articles for CypherCaster. As those magazines sell, just I get credit for that. And we think it's important that people don't do this just for quote unquote exposure. It's not a lot of money, but at least it is. You are being compensated for this, and everyone's being compensated evenly. There isn't a sweetheart deal for one writer and someone else gets half of that. It's the same for everybody who writes in the magazine. But we're trying to sort of reposition the magazine right now to serve a more developmental role, because the Cypher creator system allows people who know what they want to write and how to do layout and do their own products, that they can do that. We would like the magazine to be a place for people who are intimidated by that whole process and either want to use the IPs of Numenera or The Strange or want help. And they want help. We can provide development assistance and advice and help coach people to the point where they are writing for a magazine. We want to find new voices. We want to find new people to bring into, not just who are part of the community, but can now get their voice out through this outlet. So we're trying to serve a different role than the creator system. It's not just an outlet, but now I think we can serve as a developmental outlet.
Hopefully some people on our server watch this and take your advice, because we see quite a handful of, or not more than a handful of people like pitching ideas for like adventures they want to write, or modifications for the types or whatever have you, for like some sort of specific genre or whatever have you, and it seems like this would be an easier route to take than trying to just full on go with the creator system first and making their own layout and whatever have you. So yeah, hopefully some people hear this and take it to heart.
And that's how I started with it. I didn't start as an editor. I started as just a contributor. And I wrote recursions, basically, for The Strange. And they sometimes would include modified types or using the organizational affiliation systems for swapping out abilities with for your type abilities for kind of what eventually became flavor. I think that actually came out while I was writing some of this original work. So I was just a contributor. But I was like, this is fun stuff. I'd like to write. It's kind of a dream of mine for all these years to kind of be able to publish something and see it published that I've contributed to a game. And I want to be able to do that for other people. And I really want to do that for people who feel excluded from the riskier, costlier, or more traditional channels like creator systems. That this is a magazine for everybody, and we want to help people get to the point where they can, even if they're a little worried, that they can get to the point of publishing this work and letting other people see the interesting things that everyone's doing in their various home games.
As somebody who's purchased and read pretty much all the CypherCaster magazines, there's not an issue that I've personally read that didn't have something useful in it. Even if you don't play Numenera, you don't play The Strange, it's so much stuff you can mine from every single one of those issues. Yeah, they're really great magazines. And not to mention there's a ton of great content creators that have already written for CypherCaster magazine.
And we're supposed to be writing some stuff.
Please do.
Yeah.
Well, we're supposed to be, but we get so caught up in a bunch of other stuff. I mean, I've published a couple of things on drive-through already through the Cypher Creator Program. Because that's kind of my thing. I like the Cypher system is just like my favorite of all the Monty Cook stuff. Even though I love all the settings, that just open nature is awesome. But we're talking about the CypherCaster magazine and all that. So, do you have a favorite issue or some favorite content that you that come through there that you like to tell us about?
That is really hard to say. A lot of it is recent. Is recency. It's like things that I'm paying attention to right now I think are really interesting. Of course, I thought that the same thing and something else was very recent. And I have more of an approach to it as an almost like paternal view of what we're doing the last few issues. Whereas before I was a contributor. Now it's like this is something that's going to have my name on it and I feel responsible for. So I feel really attached to our most recent couple of issues. And I like in particular, we've had a couple of kind of continuing series of linked adventures using the Cypher system. And I find those absolutely fascinating. If I had to pick one thing, especially recently, it was just so different, and I just had it influenced me the most. Maybe I think it was Danny Neary wrote a piece on using ciphers that had some ciphers that are almost that aren't overpowering. They're not like the giant volcano cipher or things like that, but they just showed like you could just do fun, playful things with ciphers and talked about how to game with these ciphers. And I have a hard time, actually. I think it's one of the challenges I have with the system is using ciphers effectively. And so that article really stood out to me as the most kind of influential and useful to me. I'll cheat answer that way.
No, that's awesome. I mean, it makes perfect sense. I mean, you know, I realized with me with ciphers, I'd be honest with you, I initially took a minute to grasp it, but my thought process, once I kind of got it, I just looked at ciphers as equipment.
Yeah.
You know what? It's just equipment. It's just things, a grenade.
It's Batman's utility belt.
Yeah, exactly.
It always has something useful. You never quite know what it is.
Exactly. So,
and from a writing standpoint, as a GM, personally, ciphers are I find most enjoyable creating out of anything. I love creating ciphers.
And one way I use that isn't actually according to the rules in the Strange is I do the same thing with artifacts that I do to ciphers. So if someone had an artifact, I would tell them, okay, you have that magical spear. Well, what is it going to look like in this new cyberpunk area?
Yeah.
right.
Even though technically by the rules the artifacts don't change, I made them change anyway because that's fun. And, and it wouldn't it's not that I was trying to stop them from using the spear. Like no, you have it. That's fine. That's not in question. I just want to know what this would look like. I want to hear your interpretation of a cyberpunk spear.
Exactly.
Right. I love those conversations.
They are the best. Quite honestly.
You and Dave, you guys have the Incantation podcast, which is excellent, by the way. You got
Thank you.
over 70 episodes. I think you just told me today you're on your 76th episode.
I just edited 76 today. We've released 75.
All right, so could you just tell me a little bit about Incantations and why did you choose to do an Invisible Sun podcast?
This started during the Invisible Sun Kickstarter. So I was at Gen Con and went to the rollout that ended up being the rollout for Invisible Sun. We didn't know at the time what was going on, only that we were told there would be a big announcement from Monty Cook Games. And so we were waiting there and sitting next to a friend of mine. We were just aghast. We thought this was amazing. We'd never seen anything like the art before. There still wasn't a lot of information about the game, but we were certainly interested. And then the Kickstarter starts and more information starts rolling out. Like, this is something I really am interested in. And it was a time when I really also wanted to become more part of the community and be more active in the community. And so I went out to the people I knew through the CypherCast network and others and said, is anyone interested in co-hosting a podcast on this subject? Because there are a couple podcasts about the Cypher system, but there isn't one yet for Invisible Sun because the game doesn't exist yet. And silly me, I thought we actually launched, I think, right before the end of the Kickstarter. And we were using Kickstarter updates, what information we could, talk about inspirations for the game, from fiction to TV shows to movies. We always do a horror movie at Halloween, and what you can use this in your Invisible Sun games, kind of pick pieces out of it, that sort of stuff. And we started this. We, of course, didn't realize how long it would be between the Kickstarter and the release. So we had the release came right around episode 50. At that time, we were releasing every other week. We've now moved to a weekly release schedule, but the episodes are shorter. We tend to do like one segment rather than two segments, but we're releasing every week now. And when we got started, I joked with my co-host Dave that I'll number these with 3 digits, like 001, because it seems so silly, but it's possible we might need a 3rd digit. And now we're looking at we'll be close to episode 100 when Gen Con comes around.
Awesome.
And so they said we went for 2 years almost, I guess, or a year and a half without having the game to actually talk about. We had to be very careful. We were both in the play test. And we're like, there's a lot we can't really talk about, but I think we handled that well enough that we didn't offend anyone at MCG. We didn't break any NDAs, but kept the conversation going. And it's been fantastic. I've learned a lot from Dave and about how he was reading the game and how he's playing the game. It's always a fun conversation on the subject, and it's a game that has so many novel aspects to it, from mechanics to setting, that I don't see necessarily an end to this until lifestyle changes or whatever. If we can't sustain it or anything like that, it won't be because of lack of material in the game. It'll be because of outside forces. But we're having a good time. We hope people are enjoying it. We do see that people download it. I hear occasionally people listen to it, and that's what we're happy with. We don't have sponsors. We're not seeking sponsors. We don't have aspirations to build this as part of building our empire. This is just a game we thought was really interesting that had no podcast type of support. So we thought we could fill that function and maybe serve as a piece of the community, the Invisible Sun community, to support that game as it was launching.
Nice.
Most
Very nice.
I'm just picturing, 100 years from now, the world apocalypse started during episode 50 of the Incantations podcast.
Oh,
Yes, the manifestation of the black cube back last summer was actually the beginning. I mean, there will be a lot of stories about whether the beginning of the end was 2017. I don't think they're going to be about Invisible Sun, the RPG. But 2017 may be an important year for for years to come.
Yeah, let's not get into that.
Yeah, that's fine.
So,
I don't need to pursue that any further.
keeping things moving. What is your process for coming up with new episodes of Incantations? And do you have any advice for anyone trying to start their own podcast?
The first question is easy to answer. Usually 24 to 48 hours before the episode, we're like, hey, what are we going to talk about? It was easy early on when we had this long list of backer updates. And we're like, okay, well, I guess we need an episode about each of the character types and each of the, so we had a list we just go almost update to update and just talk about that for a segment and then mix in some other things like, hey, here's a movie I saw that would be kind of cool to talk about. And we wanted to change the types of segments to make sure there's some variety. So it wasn't just like all mechanics one day or something along those lines. Of course, now it's one segment usually, so it's all mechanics one day, but it's a 15, 20-minute conversation, so like an hour of mechanics. Now we still try to mix it up, but we're mixing in setting material. We've mostly gotten through the mechanics, though we have more conversation. We revisit occasionally and say, now that we're playing more, wow, we think about this mechanic entirely differently. But it's really as arbitrary as 48 hours before saying, what should we talk about? This is funny because almost every time we start recording, every episode we'll mention, oh, we should do an episode on this. Oh, we should do an episode on this. We don't yet actually have a list.
Those are the
Hopefully
conversations we have between us too.
All the time.
Yeah, I hope Dave won't be upset that I've let the secret out that we don't actually keep a list of all of those. But we do. It does actually, when we say it enough, like, oh yeah, we keep mentioning this. We should talk about it.
Yeah. And that's
In terms of advice for people starting out, do it. It's not hard anymore. I had no experience with audio editing before we started. I had no experience with recording. And I do the editing for the episode, which you could probably tell because it's not professional. But it's okay. It doesn't embarrass me. That's really what I was going for. Not embarrassing. And it's inexpensive to get started. I did invest in like a $50 mic, but actually at first I didn't even do that. I think I had a $20 mic and it was fine. Free audio editing software and just get going. And since we had humble aspirations, we weren't trying to make a living off of this. We didn't need to worry about, are our listener counts high enough? Are we going to be able to use this to get a sponsor? Like, we just wanted to talk about the game, and we just wanted to provide a place where people could hear about the game, possibly for people to come on and talk about the game. We've had some guests on, rarely but occasionally, and we've met those expectations. We're happy with what we've done in that regard. So if your goal is to get your voice out there and to have a good time talking about a game and to help and provide a little more material for a community to build, just do it. The barrier is so low right now to do it. The technology is cheap. Just do it. People, and as worried as I was about my amateur audio editing and the time, it doesn't take all that much time and all sort of stuff. I have in 75 episodes, I have never heard a complaint about like audio quality. Or the stuff that I was really intimidated by, that's like the technical side. People worry about that a lot less than the people who never produce the podcast because they're afraid of what others will say.
Exactly. That's awesome.
They just want to hear new voices, hear new people, hear new ideas. And if you are interested in providing that, people aren't going to, if there's probably someone out there who will complain someday. I've never experienced that myself, but if you hear it, just wave it off.
Thank you.
Email me and tell me, this person's being a jerk, and I'll tell them, yep, that sounds like someone's being a jerk, but you're awesome. I will commit to doing that. If you email me about someone being a jerk to you about editing a podcast, I will reply, they're being a jerk and you're awesome.
Nice.
You
Nice.
can't please everybody, but you can please yourself.
There it is. So.
Well, yeah. I've been surprised there have been as many people who just have been reached by it and entertained by it and interested with what we've talked about. It's been great, and I encourage other people to do the same thing. Though at some point we will have as many podcasts as we have people. That will be a problem. That's for another day.
It's a great podcast, though, and we definitely gonna put the links down below. But everyone that's interested in Invisible Sun or even interested in gaming, you should check it out because it really is a great podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you. We love it.
Speaking of stuff like that, we're talking about Invisible Sun. Invisible Sun is considered a deluxe game or a luxury game.
Yeah.
Monty Cook has done this before with Tolus. What do you think about that? Do you think what impact do you think it's had on the RPG community? And do you think this might become a trend?
I think it's already a trend. So now there's already a trend for there at least being deluxe options for RPGs. So I mentioned I've received a bunch of RPGs. Some of them are deluxe versions. Like I just got my copy of Wraith 20 because it was so influential to me in college that I went ahead and spent for the big deluxe nice edition that ended up waiting extra 4 months or something for it. So, and that's not the first time that Onyx Path has had these deluxe editions. There have been deluxe editions. I remember one I was tempted to buy years ago of the first adventure path for Pathfinder. Was it Rise of the Rune Lords?
Yeah.
They had a special deluxe edition that had all these other handouts and things like that built in it. Chaosium with Call of Cthulhu has often had deluxe editions. I have a copy of the Horror on the Orient Express. It was like $100 box set with a bunch of handouts. This is not new. So there being deluxe options is not new. Though I do accept that there's something a little different with Invisible Sun in that there is no non-deluxe option to buy.
I was just basically gonna say that, like, Orient Express was beautiful, and I think I will compare that closest. But the base game at its price point is kind of something new, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I do wish there were another on-ramp that is less expensive, that doesn't have to have all the little pieces and have the cube and the production values that go into that, whether it's electronic or it's just a book version. And I hope that this exists in the future. I have no information about whether it will or will not, and they certainly haven't asked me. If they were to ask me, I would say I think this game is fantastic, and if you want the game to have legs, then you need to do this. But that's their choice to make. I think some of the controversy is a bit overblown in the price point. Yes, it's a large price point. It's the difference between having to buy a player's handbook, a dungeon master's guide, and a monster manual at the release of the new edition at the same time versus being able to pick up just one of those books. If you think about it, if you were to buy those 3 books off the shelf on release day, that's not far off from what the cube costs.
Nope.
Now, it's one of the differences is to be a player, maybe you just need the player's handbook. Maybe you borrow the player's handbook. And a lot of us have these sorts of stories. But honestly, for your group to play, you need those 3 books. That's going to cost you $150. And now we're in range. And you add in dice and you add in a couple other a module or something. You're in range of what the black cube costs. I don't mean to say that there is no concern here. Like, I understand that it creates a barrier, and I think that one of the strengths of the Monty Cook Games community is its inclusiveness, and so creating barriers is something we need to be very attentive to. So I do endorse there being something that comes out to provide a less expensive option, but I don't think this is so new and so different that it's going to break that the precedent it sets is going to be a whole bunch of games in the future that that most people can't afford, or that are 4 times as expensive as the alternative. So the deluxe game trend will continue. The question is whether, in this particular case, they will follow up with an on-ramp, and I believe they will. But again, I have no information to suggest what that will look like or if they actually will.
Oh,
Okay, before we go to the next question.
Hold on, I was just gonna say, for the record, Invisible Sun is absolutely worth the price point. Yeah, that wasn't what the question was implying. Like, it's absolutely worth the price point.
It's worth every penny. I mean,
yeah, it's worth every penny. I
didn't take it as but there are some voices out there who feel that this is a grave problem in the community and have castigated Monte Cook Games for this because they're part of the capitalist, hierarchy or whatever. So I think that some of that's a bit overblown, and some of it is communication where it's changing. It was intended to change the way people buy games. And I don't think people really wanted to change the way they buy games. And so they look at it as, this is the game you buy. Well, no, if you look back at especially the early advertising for the Kickstarter, like, this is not the book everyone buys. Mm-hmm. This is something that you and your group get together and say, we all want to do this.
Right.
And so we will all pay $50 and get something really cool. And that we couldn't get if four of us were just buying copies of a $50 book.
Yeah.
And so they were intending it to be a group purchase, not an individual purchase, but that would require a paradigm shift in how people think about purchasing games and pricing games and what the retail market is and advertise. So I don't think it ever really accomplished that paradigm shift. And the dissonance then between people thinking, when I buy a game, that's the sticker price is the price I as an individual are paying, as opposed to the price that our group is paying as a whole for all this material. I would be shocked if most D&D tables, to take just the dominant example, don't have more dollars worth of books around them than the cost of the Black Cube.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. Do you think, just out of curiosity, do you think will there ever be a PDF version of Black Cube, of the Black Cube?
I don't know. I hope there's something. It might not be exactly the same, but I'm hoping there is something that people could look at and say, like, this, here's the PDF version for $30 to $50, whatever it is. It lets you play the game. It doesn't give you the bits and bobs, which are really cool. Yeah. But it lets you play the game. And that way you can go buy The Secrets of Silent Streets, and you can buy the book M. You can buy all those other products, even if you don't have the Black Cube itself, which is just prohibitively expensive to keep in retail. I hope that's true. I am not aware of any movement in that direction. But I very selfishly, I want it because I play games online more than anything else. And if it's hard for me to recruit players if I say, oh, by the way, technically I can't give you the books. So you can kind of trust me on what I'm telling you about the game. And I think we can still have fun with this, but people want to be able to go on to play online. And pretty soon the Black Cube will be out of print again. Like after the second Kickstarter, I don't know that they're going to do a Kickstarter every year or every other year. So, but I'm pretty sure it's not going to be a product that's available in retail consistently because it's just so expensive to produce because of it's such varied content. But I hope they have a plan. I don't know what that plan is. But I hope they do.
The demand is there, though, because you see what both Kickstarters did. The demand is absolutely there.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I was at that Gen Con, and I missed the seminar when they announced Invisible Sun because I was actually working the booth. And, one of my buddies brought back a phone, and I got to see it, and I'm like, oh, wow, that sounds really great. And I was one of those people who said, you know what? I can't justify the price. I just can't. I couldn't. I didn't have a group that I was playing with, a dedicated group that, and I didn't mind spending the money, but it was like, if I spend this money, I want to be able to play the doggone game. I mean, come on, $250. I want to play the game. And then at Gen Con last year, I got pulled into an Invisible Sun game because they needed an extra person. I had no intention of playing. I was just like, I'm just going to miss out. And Anthony should tell you, I came out of here like, oh my God, I got to get it. I got to have it. Oh my God. It's just, I need it. And then
even so much, I was running a game and he interrupted the game I was running. I was running a Numenera game. Yeah. And he interrupted it to tell me, hey, Invisible Sun is awesome. I got to go. And walked off.
You got a GM intrusion in real life.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, I was blown away, and just the ideas that it generated were, it was something unique. It was an experience. And so when they did do the second Kickstarter, I was able to get in on it and waited for my black cube impatiently.
Tell me about it.
But
as we record episode 45 or something of a podcast, like, I still don't have this game. I understand. But I don't want to. I think it is valid to question whether there should be a less expensive, more accessible on ramp to the game. So I don't. While I think that the controversy is somewhat overblown, I don't mean to say that there isn't a valid complaint that I hope that they will be able to address. And really, I should say that they're willing to address. This is not about ability. There are things they can do.
I was similar to Dean. I didn't back the initial Kickstarter. It was just a price shock of $250 until I saw the video when they opened the cube on. Yeah. And then it seemed like they, like when someone goes into a magic bag or a magic hat, and they're constantly pulling stuff out. And it seemed like the video went on forever with everything that was coming out. And then I was like, okay, I get it now. This is absolutely worth it. But can the average teenage gamer afford this? Probably not.
No, and again, the comparisons, I think it was trying to achieve something different, and it is a different paradigm. They were looking at specifically Kingdom Death Monster. I don't know if you know, that's a board game that also went gangbusters and is on Kickstarter. It sold out. It became one of the most sought after board games, and it was something like $150 or something for this board game. And regularly you'll see, especially board games with lots of miniatures and plastic, $125 to $150 is fairly typical for those games. Right. So I think that's what they were looking at. They're saying, look, people are paying almost $200 for Kingdom Death Monster. By the way, if you haven't looked at that yet, Google that. If you just want, some of it's kind of edgy sort of art, so trigger warnings. There's some little sexy pieces and maybe whatever, but it's really interesting surreal art to look at. So just look at the art that they've created for that game. But when Monte Cook Games people are watching these Kickstarters do well, and the art that can be achieved, things that have never been able to be done in board games can be done now because they can create games that cost $150. That's what they were thinking about. They've talked about this. This is not a secret. Yeah. They've talked about that was one of their visions, is to have that experience of opening one of these types of board games and seeing all the pieces. They wanted to recreate that experience, but it was for a community that was used to $50 books.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
And so I think it was just it tried to get people to think differently about games, and it succeeded. For some people, for others, they were not persuaded they should think about games differently. And that's not to the fault of that person. Like, they don't. That's not what they want from their game, and that's how.
You know what? I mean, you made a good point, and the craziest part about it is not just Invisible Sun in and of itself. I think it's everything that they're doing at Monte Cook Games with Cypher System in general, because we encounter it all the time when people come into the Discord channel and they're talking about Cypher System. And we have a few people who consistently want to compare it to D&D or compare it to Pathfinder. And it's like, no, you need to shift your paradigm. The thought process for approaching this game is not that.
And you don't have to choose. Like, no. I just finished an arc with my home game of a Cypher System game. And we're starting Monarchies of Mao, which is a game based on 5th edition mechanics with anthropomorphic cats.
Right.
And so I play D&D, basically. And just, that's fine.
Right.
They do different things. And you have to evaluate them in kind of by different standards. But there's nothing wrong with playing both of those games and liking both of those games. But I shouldn't say complain about something in 5th edition or Monarchies of Mao Cypher System could have done this differently. Yeah, that's a whole different game. And you could look at Cypher System and say, 5th edition could have done something differently.
Right.
Yeah, it could have, but that's a different game. And we can learn. Like I will never DM D&D the same way again. I will, I'm sure, be DMing D&D at some point in the future. The way I do it will be influenced by my experiences running the Cypher System.
And
GM intrusions will exist in any game I ever play from here on out. In some version, they will exist in any game.
If you think about it, I don't know what Monty Cook is up to, but they're up to something because in all the latest packages you're getting. Oh, well, let me show you. I got my copy of Slaves of the Machine Guide.
Mm-hmm.
And in the package,
my copy hasn't come yet. I don't know. And we both ordered the same day.
There was a sheet torn. It looks like it was torn directly out of Numenera creatures. And it's got all these like little notes. And it's showing you, oh, look, challenge rating 14. Oh, look, hit points 14, D12. Oh, look, and I'm going, oh, okay, your best game ever. They're actually going to show you the parallels. So if you want to adapt something from one, which we always talk about, adapting how easy it is to adapt things to Cypher, they're going in reverse.
I don't think that's for your best game ever.
That's what I said. Your best game ever. That's what
I don't think it's for that.
No?
I don't know a lot, and I can say even less. But watch for news soon about a different project.
Uh-oh.
I do believe this is a viral marketing game, basically, that they are laying the foundation for the next Kickstarter.
Oh my God, no! I told them.
I don't think it's a secret they're doing a next Kickstarter. That's their business model.
I already told Sean no Kickstarter.
I think those are hints.
No Kickstarter this year. Shoot.
But yeah.
I guess I'll start. You had touched on it in your answer before when you mentioned surrealism. Invisible Sun. I don't know how to describe it, but it's not like any other game.
It's its benchmark. Surrealism.
Its whole surrealism gameplay isn't something that most gamers are used to. So, how do you teach new players that game style and how they could adapt to that sort of play? And it could be a little intimidating at first.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people had the same reaction to Invisible Sun that I did with Numenera. Wow, this is a beautiful game. I don't know if I'm qualified to run it. I knew a bit about surreal art to begin with, and surrealism and the kind of the philosophical foundations of it. So I was not quite as intimidated because I knew more about it intellectually. I'll say none of that matters. You don't need any of that. Instead, don't worry about what you're doing to make things surreal. We have a lot of episodes of Incantations about taking mundane tropes like orcs or libraries or dragons. Like, how do you do a surreal version of this? So we talk through some of the processes of how to make things surreal, but don't worry about it. A lot of the game it's going to naturally do this for you. The only thing you need to do is let go and allow weirdness beyond sort of the Numenera. So it's like Numenera is about weirdness. Strange is about strangeness. And then Invisible Sun's about surrealism, and just sort of let whatever happens happen. And if you're playing the game and you're not comfortable with the surreal art or things like that, but you're using the creatures from the forthcoming Teratology or from the Black Cube, if you are using some of the locations and the books, if you are otherwise doing a dungeon crawl, if you're having fun, you're still playing it right. Let the game be as surreal as you want it to be, and don't feel like you have to meet anyone's standard by what that means. And I will tell you, no one would argue this more forcefully than the surrealists themselves. A lot of that movement was about other forms and other kind of schools of art creating artificial standards for what was beauty and what was art and what should be respected and things like that. And they were pushing against that, saying, no. What we want is a form of expression that allows us to just show you what we're thinking, what we're feeling, and show you our authentic selves, and not try to live up to the standards of the great masters or things like that in art. It was a revolutionary individualist movement to a great extent. Now, it's more complicated than this, of course, but in that spirit of revolution, do what you want to do. And if that means you want to actually do research on surreal artists and, have entire campaigns based around Magritte and Salvador Dali and this sort of stuff, have a blast. That can be great. I'm enjoying doing more research on the subject because I like that. But if you don't want to, if you just think this looks like a cool game and there's some weird stuff to it and we'll just play with the weirdness, and yeah, that dude's got a cube for a head, and that woman has these it explodes into piles of insects or whatever, go with it. That's fine. You don't need to meet someone else's standard of what is sophistication. Just have fun with it.
Say I'm a noob and I've never played any gaming before, and you want to pitch Invisible Sun to me, what would you tell me?
I'm not sure I'd pitch Invisible Sun to someone who's entirely new. But
give it a shot. Give it an old college try.
Well, if someone shows up at my table at Gen Con, let's say, and they say, I've never played another RPG, but I want to play, I heard something about this, I want to play this one. I'll say, okay, I can still teach this game in 15, 20 minutes, maybe a little bit longer than Cypher System, but really not much. It's very, very similar mechanically. My pitch would be, this is a game in which anything can happen because magic is everywhere. And just because you think that gravity always pulls the ball down when you throw it, you don't have to believe that will always be true. Magic can do anything. Now, let's play.
Nice.
Speaking of playing Invisible Sun, or teaching others or whatever have you, what is your favorite design aspect from Invisible Sun, or your favorite game mechanic from it?
I like it's a simple one. I like the stacking dice where you have to have multiple successes to overcome magic. I just like the flavor of it. This was the one thing that I liked mechanically from the original presentation at Gen Con, was like, it made so much sense to me that you can pick a lock, but it's a magical lock. It doesn't matter how good you are picking locks. Unless you've got magic, you are not picking that lock. And so I like it introduces almost a dice pool element to what is otherwise the Cypher system. But the dice pool isn't just a raw dice pool. It represents the role of magic as a complementary force to all of the other normal sorts of things we do in RPGs. And I like that mechanic a lot. And a close second would be how character advancement can be pursued in different ways. You could become better at your order and the way your core magical mechanic, or your forte and sort of your specific flavor for your character. And you can invest in either of those, and whether you do so efficiently or not doesn't matter. Whether you do so in a balanced way or you focus on one or another doesn't seem to affect gameplay very much in my experience. So people can really be better magic users of whatever style, or they can be better in their particular kind of the equivalent of class or their specialty. You can invest in the parts of your character you are enjoying the most and make those better and more diverse. And not worry about whether you are spending points in a way that's going to allow you to keep up with your damage output with the barbarian, or whether your spaceship is going to be behind someone else's spaceship because they've invested points more efficiently. It just doesn't matter, and I really like how that is achieved almost through omission of just they didn't make it matter.
Right. Do you remember The Raven with Vincent Price and Boris Karloff?
The movie?
Yes.
Yes.
And so when you think about it, that interpretation which you just gave is perfection. Because it wasn't that Vincent Price's character was more powerful than Boris Karloff. It was his style, his machinations that made him so great, and he wanted that. It's like I could actually see that being the. Even thrown right there into Invisible Sun, that whole idea, that style.
And I think that's the movie where Magic Missile comes from.
Yes. Yep. Yes.
The magical
right.
duel. So It's kind of funny that, yes, it has this Invisible Sun. There's a freedom to their magical duel that seems like it's very Invisible Sun-like. And yet it was also the inspiration for a lot of the spells in D&D. So like Levitate,
the
Magic Missile.
Magic, yeah.
Yep. And you can see it come straight out of that movie.
Awesome stuff. So with that being said, we've talked about Invisible Sun, and I think we may have exhausted that idea.
It's impossible.
I understand. I know. But, of Monty Cook games aside from Invisible Sun, do you have a favorite, or is there something near and dear to your heart?
The Strange is what I've played the most. And even my Cypher system game I just finished, it's very strange. Yeah, it was called The Agents of MASH, where it was basically black and white monsters
Nice.
recruited by the government to fight the new, color movie era monsters from monster movies. So I said, imagine the Bride of Frankenstein punching Samara from The Ring right in the face. That's what that campaign was about.
Awesome.
And so it really is kind of strange like. And so I would have to say, if I picked a game, it'd really be The Strange. That's what I wrote for CypherCaster. Kind of brought me into that side of the community. It's what I wrote about most. I was blogging for a little while. I'm terrible at keeping that habit up. And so that is where I kind of feel most comfortable. And I love the flexibility of it. So there we go. Strange.
Oh, that's a great setting. I mean, but I can't lie, I love every setting they make. There hasn't been one that I haven't liked, so it's hard to choose. But those are the end of our regular questions. But this is the important one. Drum roll, please. The quick fire, rapid fire questions. Are you ready for these, Scott?
I don't know if anyone's ever ready, but I'm willing to give it a shot.
I think I know the answer to the first one. But player or GM?
GM usually. I'm ecstatic that I can be a player for the next few sessions as I take a break with my current group.
All right, so pull punches or go for that TPK?
I pull punches. I'm not bashful about it at all. I've been through the era of people bragging about their TPKs, and I enjoyed that when I was a different age and a different place and time. But right now, I would rather, unless the party says, "Hey, you know what would be cool? Let's go out in a blaze of glory." I will pull punches and make sure that people have a more interesting next stage, maybe, than they otherwise would have in the game. But I very rarely will kill off a character, and always only with consultation with the player.
Online or in person gaming?
I prefer in person, but I do much more online now. Just because there aren't a lot of people in my neck of the woods that are interested in any game other than D&D and Pathfinder, frankly. That's fine. They can have their fun. But
I'm just saying, Scott, we do a lot of online gaming too.
Yes, you do.
Hit us up.
I keep chickening out. I don't even know what it is, but I've wanted to do something as a fundraiser for James Wall's charity, or the Lawful Good Gaming group. Yes. And I keep saying I'm going to do that, and it just never happens. But something I would like to do is for an open call. But I also do my own kind of personal games. All of it right now is online.
We also guilty. I spoke to James multiple times about setting up a Lawful Good Gaming, games on the Cypher Unlimited server, and we haven't followed through on that. But that is a goal for this year. We're definitely going to do something with James, because that's a great organization.
Yeah, I don't know how active they are right now. I wonder if they've been caught in the G+ phase out.
Oh yeah.
But because I haven't seen a lot of activity from that, but it could get restarted any time, and it's really on us. We could just do it.
Yeah.
Each of us could just do it.
Okay, that sounds good.
And James, I'm sure, be fully supportive.
Yeah. Announce the difficulty number or keep it secret?
I almost always announce the difficulty number. Mostly because I don't want to keep track of it otherwise. It's laziness.
So, salty or sweet snacks at the gaming table?
Usually salty.
RP, combat, or a good mix?
Good mix. And yeah, it's been interesting. The group I've been playing with recently are accustomed to combat heavy games. And yet I think we had several people out, and we had kind of a small group one night online. And at one of the sessions that they will remember, I think, most, had no combat in it, was all RP. And I think it might have kind of made them rethink how much they are really only interested in getting from one combat encounter to another. But for me, in the games, I prefer a mixture of the two, and I'd say more and more shifting towards RP. Though I would say exploration more than just raw RP. I don't do voices, that sort of stuff. I'm just not good at that. And I like playing that sort of game, but the stuff that I interest most is sort of the creative exploration aspects,
Nice.
And much less the combat stuff lately.
That's awesome. PDFs or physical books?
I still prefer reading off of physical books. I have more PDFs, but I prefer to read off of physical books. Though some of them are so heavy now that, like, this Wraith book is so big, I don't know how I'm going to handle it.
All right, so moving along, GM screen or open roles?
I am, to the extent one can be old school Cypher system, I am open roles, wandering around the table with no seat and no GM screen. Because one of the things I like about the Cypher system is I don't have to hide anything from anybody.
Yeah.
There it is. So, pre-written adventures or original?
I do not recall the last time I ran a pre-written adventure, other than outside of Gen Con. I think but for my home games, it's always original. Though I'm about to start the directed campaign with an online group for Invisible Sun, and I don't know where that counts or where that falls, because it's not really what we think of as an adventure. It's more of a toolkit.
Right.
So it's somewhere in the middle, and I think somewhere in the middle maybe where I would be happiest.
Well, that brings us to the end of the rapid fire questions and normally our interview process. So, Scott, tell us if anybody wanted to contact you, give us your contact info for the interwebs and all that good stuff.
Sure, you can find me on Twitter. I don't tweet a lot, but you can contact me there at Agenseer. You can see it underneath my name there. You can also have agenseer@gmail.com if anyone wants to email me. I am not as active as I would like to be, but I'm getting better about activity on Discord. Now I've got to check to make sure. I think on Discord I am Dr. Scott Robinson.
That sounds right.
That's right. Yeah. And so you can also contact me there, and I will try to be more active there. I've enjoyed my time there. It's just Discord is something new, and I'm old.
All right, guys.
But thank you so much for coming on and talking with us. Thank you all for watching. Whoever watched, we love providing this hopefully insightful information to the community, and we'll definitely have all that information below with the Twitter handles and the incantation links and links to CypherCaster and all that good stuff. And thank you so much. And
please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It's very important. Any support you could give us, we really appreciate it, and it helps us grow the channel. It helps us to get great guests like Scott here, and hopefully we'll have more guests coming up. If you're a content creator and like to contact us, you can either join the Cypher Unlimited Discord service and contact any of us three there, or you could leave a message down in the video below, and we'll definitely contact you. Thank you.
Absolutely. And hey everybody.
So from us at the CU, we will see you later.
Bye guys.